This is Laura, and today is Tuesday, April 1st. I want to talk a little bit about grief and the grieving process, losing a loved one, um, because it's something close, maybe the closest person to me in my life. I just lost, and so I think that with YouTube, I want to be able to talk to people and try to help them through and, through this whole process as well. On March 13th, 2.5 weeks ago, Thursday, I lost my father. My dad was a single parent to me and my brother, and it was very unexpected. He wasn't, he hadn't been sick. He had a stroke in 2005, and he was having, he still had ailments from that, which affected his speech and his use of his right arm and his right leg. But I mean, all things considered, he was doing really well. He had just got him an apartment, and he was happy. He was very happy. He hadn't really been happy since he had his stroke, and I can honestly say that the last 3 months of his life, that he was very happy. Um, One thing that was really I'll kind of take you with me through that day. Um, that Thursday morning, I had gone to physical therapy. It's just ironic how things happen. I took off work that day. I went to physical therapy for my neck because of the car wreck that I was in. And I was at therapy. I was leaving. I had just left therapy, and I just was pulling into my apartment. I had dropped my dog off at the groomer before therapy, pulled up in my apartment, and then my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. It was the apartments which my dad lived in. Was the manager, and he said, "Hey, your aunt Mary is here, and she is trying to get in your dad's house because she goes to my dad's house like every other day and does home health for him, cooks him meals and things like that." So he was like, "She's here and she can't get in. Nobody's answering, but your dad's car is there. He's not answering the door, and that's just not like him." And it was like 9:45, and I was like, "Okay, well, go ahead and let her in." And he was like, "Well, I'll call you as soon as I hang up the office phone. I'll call you on my cell phone or whatever." And I was like, "Okay, cool." Not thinking anything. Um, so he calls me back, and I hear them as they go in the apartment. They're calling my dad's name, and nobody's answering. So they said that they saw him in his bedroom, and they, was calling him, and he didn't answer. So they were gonna call 911. They said he was not responding. So they called 911. And I said, "Okay, well, I'm on my way. I'll be there in like an hour. It takes about an hour to get there." And so I just started driving. About 5 minutes after that, my aunt called me, a different aunt. She called me and she said, "Are you on your way to Corsicana, which is where my dad lived?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm in my car now. I'm on the way." She said, "Stop by my house on your, oh gosh, sorry." She's like, "Stop by my house on your way there so I can ride with you so you don't have to go by yourself." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine." And I was just kind of thinking like, I can go by myself. It's not really a big deal. But I just like, okay, I'll come pick you up because it's all the way. Oh, excuse me. So I'm driving to her house, and I get almost there. I'm probably about 5 minutes from her house. Then my phone rings again, and it's an unfamiliar. Well, first my cousin called me, and she said, "Well, I'm gonna come to Corsicana," and I was like, "Okay." I'm thinking like kind of like why, and she probably later on she told me she knew that I didn't know because I was just like, "Oh, okay," you know. So I get almost 5 minutes, about 5 minutes to her house, and then my phone rings, and it's a unfamiliar number because I had recently gotten a new phone, and all of my contacts didn't go into my phone. So I say hello, and then I hear a voice on the other end says they want to know what funeral home to go to, and I was like, "Wait, funeral home? What you talking about?" And she was like, "Is this Laura?" And I was like, "Yes, me. Are you saying that my daddy's dead?" You know, and she was just like, "You mean that they didn't tell you yet?" And I just lost it. Like, I was like, in shock, shock. And I just screamed and I threw the phone down, and I know that Jesus, like, this might sound cliche, but I know that Jesus took the wheel of that car, because I do not remember driving from the point that she told me until I pulled into my aunt's driveway. I remember throwing the car into park. That's all I remember. Um, I don't know. I just was kind of in shock. And I got to my aunt's house, and she came outside and she said, "Who called you? Who told you?" Because I was screaming and I was crying my eyes out. And I told her who told me, and she was like, "Okay." And she just told me to hold, she just let me cry. And then she said, "Well, switch seats. I mean, get in the passenger seat. I'm going to take you to where we got to go." And I just like, "I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this." Like, I had no idea this was going on. And I was like, "I'm not even, and then I was like, how am I going to tell my brother who's incarcerated? How am I going to tell him that our daddy just died, and he's in jail? He can't do anything from in jail. He can't, sorry. He can't, I just felt bad for him." So I called the jail, and eventually they called me back with him. And it took a couple of hours for them to call me back, because by the time they called me back, I was already at the funeral home. I've probably got to Corsicana about 11, and about 11:30, 12, went to the funeral home or something like that. And like right after we got there, like soon as we got there, just seemed like they called me, and I had to tell him, what happened, that our dad died. And he just cried and cried and cried, and I just cried because he was crying, and because I didn't want to tell him, and all of that. So it was just really sad. So I asked him what he wanted to do as far as like funeral plans and stuff. And I said, I don't know if they'll let you out of jail, but if they don't, I want to get daddy cremated, so that, you can have part of him. And so that after the funeral, if you can't come, when you get out, we can have like a memorial service so you can be a part of it and you can have your time and your closure and stuff. And he said that that was fine. And so we just went under the impression that he wasn't going to be able to come. So I planned the funeral. I paid for everything. Made sure everything was paid for and nice. And it just was so surreal. And I went to see him. This is like the same day he died. That same day. I saw him at the funeral home, and I could tell he had a seizure. And I think he just choked, and that's how he died. That was hard. That was hard. It's even hard right now talking about it. Like, I can't cry right now no more. I just can't. But for those of you who have ever lost someone who's like a parent, because I lost my grandmother, and this is different. Like, I feel different inside. Like, I hurt when she died, but I hurt a lot more when my dad died. And I didn't know I could hurt that much. It felt like my heart had just been ripped out of my chest and stomped on. Like somebody was continuously just like just beating my chest in, just beating my heart in. I feel like I had a big lump right here in my throat, and for like the whole week. And because we had to plan the funeral to be a week and a day out in case my brother, they could prepare and plan for him to come. So we had to plan it for that far out. And every day was just harder and harder and harder and harder. And I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep by myself. I couldn't do anything that was normal. I mean, it was like I was just walking around, just kind of numb. It was like I was in a bad dream, but I knew it wasn't a dream, if that makes any sense. It was like, this is a nightmare, but I knew it wasn't. Like, I knew it was real. I knew it was real, and I just wanted to be awakened from the nightmare. I didn't want to experience the pain anymore. I didn't want to experience the hurt anymore. I wanted the funeral home to call me so bad and say, your dad is, he woke up. I really did. But they never did. I don't know. Anyway, I, in this process, have been learning a lot. As you know, I'm a minister, and I've done plenty of funerals. I've been with plenty of people as they've taken their last breaths, but not my parent. So that's a little different. It's a lot different, actually. I'm learning. I've learned a lot more what it means to walk by faith and not by sight during this process. Because I could tell somebody to walk by faith and not by sight. But it wasn't until March the 13th that I actually had to walk by faith and not by sight. It almost was like everything that I did, every step that I took, I couldn't see. And I was literally almost felt like I was walking on a plank every time. And if my foot veered off to the left or veered off to the right, I was going to fall, collapse, just be completely done with. That is how I felt. But I knew that walking with God by faith, that I was going to be okay. I experienced the peace that passes all understanding. You see, for me before, like, I could talk about the peace that passes all understanding, and I could read about it in scripture and know about it, but I've experienced it, and I feel it a lot differently than I had before. Because if I didn't have that peace, I wouldn't be able to speak to you today. If I didn't have that peace that passes all understanding, I wouldn't be able to sit here right now. You see, because I have a peace in my heart right now and in my life that it doesn't matter. Well, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it helps me to not hurt so much. It helps me to not fall into a depression. It helps me to not be angry and bitter. That's what peace has done for me. And so I just continuously pray every day that my brother's okay in jail, and that I'm okay, and that my dad's brother and sister, that they're okay. Because I know how I feel inside. So I can only imagine, what other people are going through. So I just hope that in this video, and during this grieving process, that, I can help somebody. Because, people have really good intentions when someone dies, when you lose a loved one. And I believe people have really good intentions. But I think that sometimes people don't really know how to go about it. Like when I get texts every day saying, "Are you okay?" Well, not really. I'm not okay. I hurt. There's something missing in my heart. So are you okay to me is not a question that I want to hear. And it's hard for me to answer. It's hard for me to say yeah, because you don't want to hear me vent. You don't want to hear all of that. So I just try not to. Yeah, I'm okay. How you holding up? God's grace. That's it. That's the only reason I can even laugh, smile. So I just want to be an encouragement to somebody else. I want to be obedient to God. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below or send me a message or something.